Hello, everyone, and welcome to A Crip from the 80s. I am Chris Seaver. I just wanted to jump on here real quick to give you my thoughts about the Masters of the Universe trailer that came out. And I guess a little bit about, my history with Masters of the Universe. If you've been a fan of this channel, you know we've talked Masters from the beginning. When I first opened this up and started talking to everybody, the property, the franchise is, one of my top 5, 80s anything. As it was for so many of you like-minded nostalgia warriors. I would say that right behind Kenner's Star Wars and Star Wars in general, Masters of the Universe was the next in line that really, grabbed hold. When He-Man came out and started to hit the shelves as far as the toys were concerned, I was 5 when I started getting the toys. Around 82, I got Star Wars first in 1980. And I kept getting Star Wars probably through 85. And then and then I was getting all the Masters of the Universe stuff. In 82. 81, the toys came out, or it was created. 82, the toys were really prominent. 83, the cartoon started. And of course, that was a huge deal. But yeah, so, and I had so much Masters of the Universe stuff. It was pretty prominent, just like Star Wars. And I was a pretty spoiled kid. Because I had all manner of family members getting me all manner of 80s things. But I really took to Star Wars and Masters. And then, of course, that led into Transformers and GoBots and Mask and, the real Ghostbusters and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and all that stuff. And that was like the tail end. The turtle stuff was the tail end for me. I was getting into my teens and all that good stuff. But, so Masters is the big deal. I love it. Obviously, I still hold it true to this day. Sorry, I could have just twisted it around, but I'm being an idiot. Anyway, so I remember, so in 1987, the Dolph Lundgren movie came out, and, it was that movie and, Garbage Pail Kids that, really, I remember being, completely bummed out after seeing them. I remember a group of kids, I was 10 years old, walking out of Masters of the Universe, and I was just I remember just being pissed, because it was not Masters of the Universe to me. I was just like, what the hell was that, I didn't actually appreciate that movie until I was in my, late 20s, and just watch it as a, cheesy hunk of canon sci-fi fantasy adventure. You know, it's still not a He-Man movie to me. I mean, the most He-Man thing about that movie is probably the look of Skeletor, you know? But I own it. I have it on Blu-ray. Like I said, it's canon cheese, so I have it. Um, but the movie had been sort of in and out of development hell for, you know, geez, 20, 30 years, who knows, a long time. And I always had hope that there was going to be another iteration of it. You know, I really started to, there was a time where I was pretty upset with with Mattel, not like for real, because I mean, at the end of the day, it's all just gobbledygook and silliness, and it's just stuff that brings us a little joy. It's nothing that crazy as far as you know the world, the universe is concerned. But Mattel, I think I was just I was kind of bummed that so many things from my childhood still was prominent. It didn't really go away, and Masters went away off and on throughout the years, and it tried to do its thing, coming back here and there. I love the 2002 cartoon, and I went ape shit for the toys. Ended up selling all those toys, but I still love that cartoon. And so I always, you know, I always wanted He-Man. I wanted Masters of the Universe back in like brick and mortar stores. I was so upset. I didn't, you know, get hooked into the Matty collector thing. I always like, the fuck, yeah, they look cool, but I ain't spending $50, $60 on a goddamn figure. That's ridiculous. You know, no matter how much I love the property, I just wasn't going to do it. I really wanted them to, you know, do what they did in 2000 and re-release the vintage figures. I wanted that, or if they were going to do it, like do an iteration of it in that size. And then Mattel came back swinging, you know. First it was Super 7, and we got the Super 7 line of the Filmation stuff. As far as what I was gravitating towards, not that the property, as far as the figures and stuff, was coming back, because like I said, Matty Collector and all that stuff, but with the classics line. But it was, you know, when they put these out, and there was like a glimmer of hope, and I love this look, and I love that they mix the, you know, original design of the toys with the Filmation look. I liked that a lot. And I had hope that, okay, finally they're going to be in brick and mortar stores, and they really didn't. I mean, they were in like the specialty stores and whatnot, but it was you know, that first initial glimmer when Mattel came back and said, hey, Masters of the Universe is coming back, and we're going to go big with it, and we're doing this Origins line. And then I got super excited and went balls deep with the Origins line and all that good stuff. And have been, you know, collecting ever since. I don't really do the Masterverse stuff. I stick to what, you know, what reminds me the most of what we had as a kid. And I still have, you know, my old Masters stuff here, and my Castle Grayskull and vehicles and all that stuff, and the toys and everything. But I really went wild with the Origins. Everything that I wanted, that I had as a kid, I just got. I didn't get a lot of like, you know, I never cared for the Snake Man or any of that stuff. By that time in the He-Man line, I was out. You know, I was heavily into Real Ghostbusters, and, you know, I just didn't, that stuff didn't do anything for me, He-Man wise. I was probably out He-Man in like 86, you know. But So every time this movie was popping up, some director was attached, some writer was attached, some studio was attached, and it just kept getting either delayed, shut down, postponed, went to different studios. But I still had hope. I still felt like, you know what, one of these days we are gonna get that He-Man movie. Um, and and then sure enough, here we are, and it got in the hands of Amazon MGM. Thanks to the success of Mattel Studios launching Barbie with Warner Brothers, a lot of their toys and games and stuff like that are going all over the place to different studios. Um, and I had a good idea that Mattel was going to do a proper He-Man movie this time. And when they announced that Travis Knight was going to be behind it, I got even more excited because he directed Bumblebee. Um, he's our age. He's our Gen X age. He grew up with all the properties that we grew up with. He had a handle on it. He brought fun and heart and the Transformers to a Transformers movie. you know, um, I mean, just in the designs in the first 10 minutes alone, you're just like, holy shit, why? Yeah, like what the fuck? You know, what took so long? Paramount. Um, and he's head of Leica Studios, and he directed Kubo and the Two Strings. So I had faith. I had heard him talk about '80s properties before, and him as an '80s kid, and I sort of I knew that if anyone was going to bring He-Man to the screen, this guy was probably the right choice to do it. Um, and so I followed the production pretty closely, uh, and I am a very like I don't have my when I'm going into movies, any thing that I'm really excited about or interested, um, I don't connect my preconceived notions to it. I certainly don't go into something going, well, they better have this or else. Like that's ridiculous. It also helps that I've been making movies most of my life, and I know a lot of the ins and outs and how people should tackle certain things property wise, adaptations, whatnot. You're gonna get some differences. You're gonna get things that meld now and then I also am not one of those older, almost 50-year-old nerds who believe everything is made for us. You know, it's not. And if you're a business, no matter how passionate and genuine you are coming to whatever property it is, it's a business, and you have to think about the four quadrant, you know. And this is one of those movies. This is one of those franchises. You're not just thinking about the 50-year-olds who are whining and complaining about the color of some costume being a little off and shit like that when you're basing it on a goddamn shitty, you know, cartoon from the 1980s. And I love He-Man. Like I said, I love He-Man, but I'm also, a realistic brain using human being who, the cartoon is not good. The writing was deplorable, and they were catering to, 5 to 10-year-olds, which is what we were. You know, so I'm realistic in all of this stuff when it comes to adaptations of properties that I love. There's going to be liberties. There's going to be things that they felt needed to be worked on or changed or messed with for a variety of different reasons. And most of the time, the main studio's fault. And I'm not even talking about Mattel, because Mattel, knows what they're doing. Travis Knight is going to know what he's doing going into this, being the fan that he is. It's, if there's anything that's a little askew, it's probably on the Amazon/MGM side of things, as far as pushing a certain thing that they need for the movie to work on a large scale or whatever. But I was like any other rabid He-Man fan. I was waiting for the casting. I was, looking at behind the scenes pictures and all that stuff. And I personally was really digging what I was seeing, and then hearing reports out of CinemaCon and how like people saw some footage and saw some costumes and all that stuff, and people were like, "Yo, this looks pretty as close to the cartoon filmation iteration as we can get for a live action thing, without making it super hokey for live action, And then test screenings came out, and people loved the test screenings and all that stuff. So I'm pretty optimistic when it comes to any of this stuff, and I don't really judge until I've seen the whole movie. And I don't, and this is just me in general, I don't listen to critics. I don't listen to other people's opinion, one way or the other, I always judge things on what I see and what I feel. And that's how it should be. But we're in a society that are filled with morons and think that if they like something, then you have to like that. And if they don't like something, you better not like that either, or they're going to yell at you on the internet about it. And that to me is moronity in motion. That is just pure stupidity. Anyway, so I enjoyed everything that I was seeing, and then they put out that little teaser for the teaser trailer that had the nostalgic 80s thing in the beginning with the jazzercise and the, sugary cereals and all that stuff, playing the He-Man theme, and that was great, and that got me pumped. And then the trailer, and I saw the trailer, and I really enjoyed it. I really liked it. I've watched it so many times, and I've picked out, there's so many Easter eggs just in the teaser itself. Callbacks to the cartoon, callbacks to the artists, of the concept artists, Mark Taylor, Vicor, there's Lion-O, Rankin and Bass cartoon, Thundercats statue in the back. And that has nothing to do with He-Man, but I mean, there's little nods in that store to 80s. Big Jim with Mattel, Vicor with Mattel, and Mark Taylor and all that stuff. But I mean, the way that they have sort of done their version of modernizing or making live action adaptations of the vehicles and the world of Eternia and Eternos and Castle Grayskull, and I think they've done a tremendous job. This looks like He-Man to me. The Earth thing has never bothered me at all, because I know they're not going to spend an exorbitant amount of time on Earth. It doesn't scare me. It doesn't, oh, it worries me. Nothing. Like, if it's fucking He-Man, if it's Skeletor, if it's the characters that we grew up with, like doing their thing, I'm cool, man. Like, I was never worried about the Earth thing because, these guys know what they're doing. And everybody knows the disappointment of, us kids back then with the original Dolph Lundgren movie, that like, what the fuck are we doing on Earth? Just because, it's because Canon Films made this goddamn thing. They didn't have a budget, it was their most expensive at the time. And a Canon most expensive is like probably $30 million, So, it was going to be ridiculous. But yeah, so I really enjoyed it. I was quite happy, and I was smiling through the whole thing and giddy, and so many people like contacted me to be like, man, did you see the trailer? I sent it out to people. My son contacted me because I got my son into it when he was little. All the 80s stuff that I grew up with, I pushed on him as he was growing up. He's a pretty cool 19-year-old who knows a hell of a lot about the 80s and 80s pop culture, which is like completely goes over his pals' friend, his friends' heads and shit like that. But um, yeah, so it was nice to see my 19-year-old son also excited about a He-Man movie. It was pretty cool. Um, but there's even some designs on Eternia that are like winks to some of the weird ass designs in the cartoon. I noticed a lot of like red and dark purpley red vines and moss and shit like that all over the place. And if you remember the cartoon, there's a lot of weird foliage like that throughout Eternia. And I was spotting that in the trailer, because you go through and you look at every fucking detail. You pause it and you just go through. I loved seeing Trapjaw and Beastman and Fisto and Blink. If you'll miss it, but there's Ram Man and Mechaneck in the background, and you know from test screenings, I heard there's a whole bunch of characters that we're just gonna be like, whoa, Um, everyone's crying about Orko, but I think Orko's in the movie, and it's like I don't want to see everything. People were already crying about like, oh, but why didn't Cringer have his Battle Cat armor on? Like, man, don't you want to wait and see stuff? Like, I don't know. Like, when it comes to trailers and stuff, I only watch teasers now. I never watch the full trailers. Just the teasers, and then I go in as blind as possible after that. Um, I like that. I like being surprised. I like seeing things for the first time on the big screen. And this was just enough. I was sold anyway, but this just pumped it up to 11. So, the collector, Skeletor's vehicle from the cartoon. This guy, their interpretation, and I already see like so many people bitching like, ooh, Guardians of the Galaxy, like, guys, like, first of all that cosmic stuff, Marvel cosmic, Thor, Guardians of the Galaxy, Jack Kirby, all that stuff, it's mixing fantasy and science fiction. That's what it's always been. Thor is technology and fantasy. And when they were developing the Masters of the Universe, there's a documentary about Masters of the Universe. There's little documentaries, the toys that made us, all this stuff. There's full on documentaries. Like, you can know the history. It's out there. Look it up. But He-Man has always been science fiction and fantasy mixed together. It's Star Wars and Lord of the Rings. It's that type of magic, techno magic. It's always been there with this property. So nobody's ripping off anything. Everybody's borrowing from everybody. It all came from somewhere before, and it's a fucking cycle over and over and over again. So again, to me, it looked like Masters of the Universe. I was like, yeah, this is techno fantasy, and I dug it, and I think I'm gonna really really dig this movie. I'm very excited for it. So yeah, those are my long-winded thoughts on the Masters of the Universe teaser trailer. Give it a watch. You may just get those feels as well. I sure did, and June 5th can't get here soon enough. I mean, come on. Let's go. I'm ready. Again, I'm not going to see anything else. I've seen enough. That's how I am. I just cut it off, and I wait for me in that theater, having it wash over me, and telling the story that it wants to tell. Telling the story that the studio and the filmmakers want to tell, and I'll take it in and decide after I've seen it if I like it or if I don't. There. So what did you guys think of the Masters of the Universe 2026 live action movie teaser trailer? Let me know in the comments. Do you love He-Man? Are you just as excited as I am? Oh, and guess what came on the day when it came out? Queen Marlena. Look at that. He-Man's mom. From Earth, by the way. And just a little while ago, I got King Randor for the Filmation cartoon collection origin line. But this came in the day the trailer dropped. Apropos. Anyway, do you have the power? 'Cause I do. Yeah, Orko.